Hey everyone, this is Nick, and if you're looking for some reassurance after you switch to Linux and you want to ensure it's still the best thing, then you've come to the right place. BIOS remorse is definitely a thing, although in our case it's probably more switcher's remorse after distro hopping 20 times and realizing that your first distro was actually the right one for you. Anyway, this time we have HP announcing a new laptop running Pop! OS out of the box instead of Windows. We have Budgie listing all their goals and the future features that are coming to the desktop environment, and we have the first beta for KDE Plasma 5.25, which I'm currently running on my laptop, and it's great. And of course, we have the traditional new wine release. We have the Steam Deck getting better and better, we have updates to GNOME and KDE, and we have DuckDuckGo being embroiled in a controversy. What will never be controversial though is the way I handle these segues to today's sponsor, which is going to give you $100 of free credit to start your own Linux or gaming server. Thanks to Linode for sponsoring this video. Linode is the best choice to deploy your own Linux or gaming server. Getting started is extremely easy thanks to their app marketplace. You can just pick from one of the many apps they offer, select a few configuration options, and just one-click deploy that server. It's super simple. It works for a development environment, but also for a Minecraft or Valheim server. Among the most notable apps, Linode has Moodle to create your own learning management system and teach and sell courses in minutes, but they also have stuff like Pi-hole to block ads. But please don't block mine because I need money to buy more games for the Steam Deck. From Focalboard, a Trello alternative to Rocket Chat, which is the equivalent to Slack or Teams, Linode has everything you would want. Click the link in the description to get your $100 credits and get started. So, HP is now getting in the Linux game with a new laptop called the HP Dev 1. It's meant for developers, it looks very sleek, and it runs Pop! OS out of the box. Yes, Pop! OS, made by System76, a direct competitor, although a lot smaller than HP. The new laptop has a super key with a more neutral label instead of a Windows key. It starts at $1099 US, and it comes with an 8-core AMD Ryzen 7 Pro processor, 16GB of DDR4 RAM, 1TB of SSD, a 14-inch 1080p display, and integrated Radeon graphics. There is no exact date for when it will be available, but it's pretty nice to see devices from big manufacturers shipping with Linux pre-installed. HP joins Lenovo and Dell on that front, and I love it, although this specific laptop seems to be US only for now, unfortunately. And it still aims specifically for developers, which is definitely not going to help Linux's image that is mainly made for developers. Which it's not anymore at least. The Linux kernel version 5.18 was released. The main change is the integration of Intel's software-defined silicon driver, which limits access to certain CPU features if an Intel certificate isn't present. This addition is definitely controversial, it seems, because it means that while your CPU is able physically to do certain things, it won't do them, because you didn't pay for a license that lets you use these features. It's basically like having DLC on the disc for a game. It's there, but you can't use it unless you pay. Apart from that, we also have support for the Raspberry Pi 02W, as well as for the Razer Black Widow keyboards. And we have better support for Apple Magic keyboards and ACPI power profile support on AMD-powered ThinkPads. There are also improvements to AMD virtualization. FreeSync is enabled by default on the AMD GPU driver, and BetterFS has faster sync. This Intel thing seems to open the door to basically renting your CPU instead of outright owning it, and I do not want to pay to have the right to use my cores. It's not that, not yet, but it might be. So now let's just hope no one from Intel watches this and gets any stupid ideas. GNOME developers shared their progress on apps and libraries, just like every week. This time around, GNOME software works better with different font sizes and better formats file sizes. Warp, the app I talked about last week that lets you send files device to device, is now part of GNOME Circle, the unofficial but approved GNOME apps list. Pika Backup 0.4 is now out with libadwaita support, scheduled backups, rule-based removal of older archives, and a new user interface. We also now have Crosswords, a game to, well, do crossword puzzles. Telegram, the GNOME Telegram client, now has better support for the protocol as a whole, including message event types, user action reports, more authentication methods, ability to pin chats, and to open specific chats by clicking on a notification. Geopard, the Gemini client, and Amberall, the music player, also received a few tweaks and UI improvements. I personally use Deja Dup for backups, but Pika Backup looks like an interesting solution. I might try it as well. Is backup app hopping a thing? KDE developers also like to talk about what they do, and so we have more weekly news here. This week they focused on fixing bugs, since they just released Plasma 5.25 beta. They solved 5 15-minute bugs, including for the lock screen and auto-hiding panels. And you can now display 2 different calendars inside of the main date and time widget pop-up, which means you can, for example, track the Occidental and the Chinese calendar at the same time. Dolphin gains a tooltip when hovering over the remaining disk space to get more info. The kickoff menu now works better for Chinese, Japanese, or Korean users. GNOME apps using client-side decoration, so basically most of GNOME apps, now have a more KDE look and feel with the correct border radius, menu shadows, and highlights. Other small UI tweaks include the search page in the system settings, a nicer user switcher widget using your profile pic, and a bunch more. All of this will land in KDE Plasma 5.25 next month, which is awesome, and I'm also going to give KDE a little bit more love before the end of the month, so stay tuned for that. Speaking of which, that 5.25 beta has now been released. It includes a ton of new features, like accent color title bars on the Breeze theme, a screen shake when entering an incorrect password, the ability to apply an accent color from the wallpaper, or to tint the whole color scheme using your accent color. Global themes now will let you pick which parts of the theme you actually want to apply. You can control when tablet mode is enabled. You have floating panels if you want to enable that. Folder view icons are now saved on a per resolution basis, so moving from multiple display configurations to another shouldn't move your icons around. There are new touchpad gestures to open the overview, new screen edge gestures on Wayland. Discover now displays permissions for apps, the app pages are also revamped in there, and there's a lot more stuff that I will cover in my dedicated video. I can't spoil everything here, can I? But I already replaced Fedora on my laptop with KDE Neon Unstable, so I'm already using the beta, and it's awesome. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see my video on the final release. You know you're coming back every week for these news videos anyway, so why not get everything in your feed? Just subscribe. Microsoft issued a warning about Xor DDoS, a malware specifically targeting Linux devices. They observed a 254% increase in activity from that Trojan, which causes denial of service on Linux servers and endpoints. Microsoft provides a very detailed explanation of how that malware works, how it propagates, and also how to defend against it. Of course, they also use the opportunity to plug their Microsoft Defender anti-malware and antivirus solution, which I guess isn't completely stupid in that case, but they also pushed Microsoft Edge because it supports integration with Microsoft Defender as well. To their credit, they also listed a few things that are not Microsoft related and that can help. You can always count on the Redmond company to push their services to people, and even Linux users these days it seems. Except the services that people actually want to have, like Microsoft Office. The Framework laptop, known for its complete upgradability and ease of repair, can now be upgraded to 12th gen Intel CPUs. This requires a new motherboard, but since you can replace the old one with a new one, you can keep your current device and everything else and just change the heart of the laptop, which is the thing I really like. You can also pre-order the new Framework laptops from their website with any of 3 CPU choices, 1 variant of an i5 or 2 variants of the i7. You can of course also pre-order just the motherboard, which is good since the previous motherboard can also be used as a separate PC if you want to. You could slap it into an enclosure and use it as a small desktop if you wanted. Oh, and Linux runs perfectly on these devices, so that's pretty cool as well. I would love to get my hands on one of these amazing devices, but I also wish they offered them with Ryzen CPUs instead of Intel's. Joshua Strobel, the lead developer for the Budgie desktop environment, wrote a very detailed article about the state and the future of Budgie. It goes over literally everything from the workshops the team conducted to define the core values, the organization, the goals for Budgie 10 and Budgie 11, and the minimum viable platform that they want to ship. So what do we know? Well, Budgie 10 will eventually be replaced by Budgie 11, but in the meantime, it's still getting improvements, like a brand new app menu, app indexing backend, more spec-compliant system tray applets, and more. As per Budgie 11, the goal is to move as much backend stuff as possible in a daemon, so the various parts of the desktop will be much simpler to work on. They want to add an app overview, like the macOS Exposé or the GNOME overview, a new control center, better desktop icons, a guided tour, well-on support, and more, all while keeping feature parity with Budgie 10. It's a long read, but if you like Budgie, it's definitely worth a look. I always liked Budgie, but it always seemed to me like it lacked a flagship distro, since Solus doesn't ship Budgie as the developers intended. They apply tweaks and configurations to it. So I think it's really good that they have a plan for the future, and I think it's really good that it's getting implemented into other distros, like Fedora for example. If you're using Ubuntu and Firefox, then you're probably using the Snap version, and you've probably noticed it opens very slowly after rebooting your computer. The good news is that Canonical is working on that. They published a blog post explaining what they're doing to try and make Firefox faster when using the Snap. They ran some benchmarks, which are pretty appalling in terms of how fast the browser opens, and they've identified a bunch of areas where they could improve things. The first one is the fact that the Snap package is compressed and needs to be uncompressed at first start, which creates a bottleneck on less powerful systems. The Firefox Snap also seems to fail to detect the correct GPU and so uses software rendering instead, which taxes the CPU more. Extensions are also not handled in the best way possible, nor are icon themes and fonts. Now let's hope that all these improvements can be applied in bulk to all the Snap packages, because if they can't, then Snap will probably still be left behind by other packaging formats when it comes to performance. Do you use Plex? Do you wish you had a desktop app to play your video or audio files from your Plex server? Well, now you have an app for Linux. This new official Plex app is currently only available as a Snap package, but it brings a few cool things. First, you can get either the desktop interface or what they call the HTPC interface, which is basically the one you can get on your TV. Both of these benefit from a powerful playback engine that should make things nice and smooth during playback. It has gamepad or remote support, refresh rate switching, multi-channel audio, and a lot more. A Flatpak version that will be on FlatHub is also planned and should come soon, but there are no plans to release the app as an app image or a regular package. And I would expect this trend to continue and to extend to other companies, because why bother creating tens of packages for tens of different distros when you can just support everything with one Snap and one Flatpak? Bad news about privacy though, as it seems that DuckDuckGo isn't as private as it might have seemed. They have a search agreement with Microsoft to source results from Bing to supplement their own search results. And this agreement seems to prevent them from blocking Microsoft trackers in their browser and their mobile app. And I would guess also their browser extension. What's worse is that this was only disclosed after a security researcher found out about it, which isn't a good look. DuckDuckGo is pretty clear about the Microsoft ads that are running in their search results, but not at all regarding how the data gathered from Microsoft trackers is used, since it seems they have a confidentiality agreement about this. They're apparently trying to improve on this deal, and they expect to add more protection against Microsoft trackers in future updates, but this is still a letdown. That's quite a shock to me, as I've been using DuckDuckGo for a long while, and I'll probably be taking my searches elsewhere while we wait for clarification on how they're gonna fix the issue. The Steam Deck has now reached 3,000 games that are officially playable. That's a huge milestone for a few months of existence. And do keep in mind that these are just the games that Valve has reviewed. A ton more will work perfectly, even though they haven't been officially vetted. We now have 1,535 verified games, 1,493 playable games, and a big number of unsupported titles as well, 1,322. This means that out of all the games Valve looked at, 30% are unsupported on the deck, either because they don't work on Linux at all, or because they're not suited for the Steam Deck's hardware, performance-wise or controls-wise. Newcomers this time include Serious Sam 4, Beyond the Steel Sky, or Far Lone Sails. I mean, 30% of games being unsupported isn't huge, but it's still a sizable chunk of the Steam library, so I hope they can improve that in the future. But I'm still very satisfied that we get to play 70% of the titles on Steam that have been reviewed anyways. We didn't get a Wine release last week, so the last news video was pretty sad. But now we do, with Wine 7.9. This one is starting the work on converting macOS drivers to the PE executable format. There are fixes for a number of test failures on Windows and 35 bug fixes. This time they regard LEGO Rock Raiders, the Stellaris launcher, and EditPad Lite 7, among other bug fixes that will affect various apps and games more generally. Not an eventful release, but I'll take a new Wine version over no Wine at all. Just like I'll take this segue to today's sponsor, Tuxedo. These guys make great laptops and desktops that are running Linux out of the box. You actually order them with a choice of distro, although you can install anything you want on them because if they support Linux distros, they probably support like every Linux distro. They have a huge range of devices from the smaller Ultrabooks and NUCs to the biggest gaming PCs or workstation laptops, and they just let you configure basically everything. You can even add your little logo on the back. It's laser engraved, it looks really cool. And you have a huge range of keyboard layouts as well. They recently refreshed their Stellaris 15, which is their high-end workstation laptop, gaming laptop, with 12th gen Intel CPUs, RTX 3080s, and basically every amount of RAM or storage that you might need to run on such a laptop. It's got a 3K panel that is amazing, it's got the best keyboard I ever used on the laptop, period, and I'm gonna get a review unit very soon. I already had reviewed the previous model, which I really loved, but this one seems even more powerful, and I might even buy it for my own on-the-go video editing needs. So if you need a new device and you want something that you're sure will run with Linux, well, just click on the link below and check out Tuxedo's devices, they're really good. Now, thanks everyone for watching the video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't hesitate to like, to subscribe, to turn on notifications, to write a comment, and if you didn't like the video, I'm always fine with you disliking it and telling me why in the comments as well. But don't dislike without telling me why, that's just rude. And if all my studies in economics served me well, inflation means more money, right? No? Well, even if it doesn't, but you have too much of it, you can click on the super thanks button or on my link for PayPal donations in the description, or you can join my Patreon subscribers and YouTube members. Both get access to a weekly Patreon cast and the right to vote on the next topics I'll cover. So, thanks everyone for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!